At the close of his first term as governor, it looked as if taxes were going to be his undoing. Voters were furious with him. His popularity plummeted. It seemed his second term was out. Jim Florio's story? No, Brendan Byrne's. And he, of course, went on to be re-elected. Can the Democrats of 1991 turn it around? Some insight from former Governor Brendan Byrne. He's live on New Jersey Tonight. Brendan Byrne, governor from 1973 to 1981, is with us tonight live from Newark. The telephone number to call is 1-800-323-8852. That's 1-800-323-8852. Governor Byrne, welcome to the show.
Nice to be back.
Nice to have you here. Jim Florio's got another 2 years to go, but this Tuesday's election is largely seen as a referendum on his agenda. GOP State Chair Bob Franks calls the election Florio's Judgment Day. Is Franks being overly dramatic here or accurate should one or both houses go to the GOP?
Well, first of all, I think Bob Franks is a very shrewd politician. And he's got no downside in saying that because normally speaking, the incumbent governor sees some slippage in the midterm election. And I think that this year is no different. That Jim Florio will see some slippage in his pluralities in both the Assembly and the Senate.
Some slippage or a lot of slippage,
well,
do you think?
That's hard to say. If you had asked me that question 3 weeks ago, I would say that probably see a lot of slippage. But I think what we've been seeing in the last 3 weeks is, first of all, a bunch of television commercials which nobody really believes. I mean, when they make these exaggerated claims, I think the money spent on television commercials by the candidates has been largely wasted this campaign because it hasn't been effective. And when you try to say whatever is wrong with this state is Jim Florio's fault, when the fact is that we're in a national recession, which people more and more are blaming Bush for, and when people are looking to other states where we've got the same kind of troubles that we've got here in New Jersey, I think that there's a credibility gap there.
So you don't think voters buy the broad claim, it's his fault, it's all his fault? They're more savvy than that, you're saying. Give him a little credit.
I really think so, and I think that what my campaign in '77 proved was that voters are a lot smarter than you give them credit for. And I went to the voters in '77 and I told them about the tax, and I told them why I had done it and why we needed it. And don't forget that even though I was criticized for that tax in '77,
you can just let that go if you'd like, Governor. I think you should be able to hear the calls if you can adjust that little piece. Okay.
Somebody's going to adjust it for me, I think. There we go. That even though we had that criticism, people who criticized and held office for the next 8 years after I left never once made a serious effort to repeal the state income tax that was enacted in my administration. Okay,
let's go to the telephones. Middlesex and Larry, you're live on New Jersey Tonight.
Hi, Governor.
Hi, Larry.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
I missed the Caucus New Jersey show that you were on. Saw part of it, but not all of it. I think you answered my question about how do you think Florio's doing, and do you think he'll get reelected in '93?
As I say, who knows what's going to happen in '93, but the real question is, do I think that because Florio was the governor and recommended and had enacted a couple of $1 billion worth of new taxes will hurt them in '93? And the answer is sure it'll hurt them in '93, but I think that the vast majority of voters are ready to listen, especially in the gubernatorial campaign, to the candidates and to what they say about the issue. And don't forget that somebody has to come up against Florio and say, That's not what you should have done, and here's what you should have done. And you recall in '77.
Governor, let me interrupt. You don't think that the Republicans, who've had a lot to say all along since his tax package was enacted last year, you don't think that what they're saying is an adequate rebuttal?
No, as a matter of fact, you'll see newspaper criticism in the state now that what the Republicans are doing is to criticize, but not really offering a realistic alternative.
So he had no choice in light of the recession and in light of the ambitious plans that he had to do for the schools.
He had some choices. He had some choices, but they were tough choices. He had some choices of not funding education or funding education. He had some choice of balancing the budget or not balancing the budget, and he made the responsible decisions.
How would you characterize Jim Florio?
Jim Florio is a guy, I think, who realized it took him a long time to become governor, that now that he is governor, he wants to leave the office with a set of accomplishments, right or wrong in the voters' view. He wants to solve the problems of New Jersey, and doesn't want to coast. And there's some irritation with voters because he has met those problems head on. And I think his job now is to, as he's doing, I think is to explain to the voters what he's doing, why he did it, what the alternatives are, what kind of a debt structure we had, what kind of a commitment to education we have and want to have. And I think he's got a logical story to tell. Okay,
let's go back to the telephones. Chuck in Vineland, you're on with Governor Byrne.
Good evening, Governor. I have one quick question.
First, how are things in Vineland?
Oh, everything's okay, thank you.
Good.
Did you ever fake an orgasm?
All right. Oh. Well, I thought those Halloween calls were over with, but they're still out there. Sorry about that one, Governor. We're going to go back to the telephones now and go to Jerome in Darby. Jerome?
Hello, Governor.
Hi, Jerome.
How you doing this evening?
Good, you?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good. I just have a question. I'd like to know why there's so many people out there that's against each other, like the Democrats and Republicans. Each party puts each other party down, and they promise this and they promise that. And I remember when you were governor, and I know that you tried your best to do exactly what you said you would do when you became governor. But like the governor of Pennsylvania here, former governor Dick Thornburn, now he's running for a seat in the Senate. He promised this and promised that, and then the Democrats put him down. Some did. The Republicans put him down. They talked about each other back and forth,
Okay.
Can you explain that to me?
So we sense some voter dissatisfaction here. Empty promises, Governor.
I think that that's partly of politicians' view of the voters. In other words, the politicians think that the voters want a syrupy type of campaign, that they don't want to be faced with the truth, and to some extent that's so, and I'm not an exception to that. After all, what I did in 1977 when I went to the voters is I went to the voters with an income tax that was in place. I explained why I put it in place. I defended it. I asked people to come up with an alternative to it. The alternative was unsatisfactory. And it may have been, but there are people who say my campaign in '77 was the last real campaign on issues. And now we have all these phony issues. We have people promising to cut billions of dollars from the state budget without identifying a dollar of it. And I think there's a cynicism this year that I've not seen before, where very responsible people are saying, gee, I'm not even going to go out and vote Tuesday.
Governor, you've said that Jim Florio has had to make the tough choices, and he's made them, and now it's his job to get the message across. There was an article earlier this week in the Philadelphia Inquirer about property taxes, and it said essentially that according to its own computer analysis, in 85% of New Jersey's municipalities, either the taxes were going down, or if they were going up at the slowest pace since the late 1970s. And yet the rub is, for the Democrats, the voters don't know that. Two separate polls, Record of Hackensack and a Star Ledger Eagleton poll, show that voters still think their property taxes are going up. Democrats must be pulling their hair out.
Yeah, but, well, first of all, one of the handicaps Jim Florio has in this campaign is that he's not a candidate. And if I had not been a candidate in 1977, I couldn't go out there and explain and defend what I did. So Jim Florio is not running this year and has not had a lot of exposure in this campaign. So he hasn't gotten to the people to defend his program. And as a matter of fact, some of the candidates are running away from that tax as an issue. I think they would have been better off if they had defended it, asked for alternatives, examined the alternatives, shown what a fraud the alternatives might be, and gone to the people head on.
Okay, let's go back to the telephones. In Middlesex, Larry, you're on New Jersey Tonight. You there, Larry? Okay, I guess we're having a little trouble with the phones. We're just going to move right along. Do voters have long memories, do you think? Back to the question of trying to get across what it is you're trying to do. The property tax issue might be a little nebulous because, let's face it, a lot of people don't pay them directly. They pay them through mortgage bills. It's harder to keep track of them.
And one of the ironies, by the way, is when you, as a governor, give property tax relief to somebody in a given municipality, the mayor and the council in that municipality takes the credit for that tax relief and never gives credit to the governor and the legislature for giving the state appropriations to relieve the property tax. They just want to take the credit for it. And I don't blame them. That's politics.
But then on the other hand, voters do have a long memory, do they not, when it comes to raising the sales tax or income taxes?
Well, it depends on the tax. I think voters tend to have long memories on things that they have to pay on a repeated basis. If you renew your driver's license every year and I've increased your driver's license fee, you remember me every year. And people remember, as a matter of fact, people talked to me after I left office in around the 15th of April when they paid their income tax, and I'd meet them on the street and they would shake the finger at me, reminding me that I'm responsible for what they were doing in 1985 or 86 or 87.
Okay, more telephone calls. Marlton, Larry, let's see if we can get those lines going. Larry, you there?
Yes, I am.
Hi, you're on the air with Governor Byrne.
Okay, Governor.
How are you?
I'm fine, Governor. My name is Larry Reed. I'm from Marlton, New Jersey.
You've got a great voice. You ought to be on radio or television with that voice. You've got a great, deep voice. You ought to be on radio or television with that voice.
Thank you, Governor. I certainly appreciate that. I'm a fire prevention specialist in Kansas City, New Jersey. In fact, Governor Florio was once my attorney. At that time was a very fine gentleman. But
you have a question for the for
yes,
Governor?
I do. Over the years, Governor Florio accepted. I can't even begin to count how many dollars from the National Rifle Association and a sportsman from New Jersey, and then he turned around and. He's a turncoat. He stabbed us in the back. I don't understand it,
Well,
Governor.
I'm not sure. I think Governor Florio can be for the right to own a gun, but I think when it comes to semi-automatic guns, I can't believe that you're for allowing people to have cannons in their backyard and machine guns in their backyard, and things that really have nothing to do with the sport of hunting. And I think that Governor Florio has drawn a line in that regard. So maybe the National Rifle Association has gone a little too far off what it was when Jim Florio was supporting it. And
issues do change too. The nature of weapons on the streets changed. The whole drug war has changed, and perhaps politicians need to change also with the issues. Let's go from Marlton now to Cherry Hill. Malcolm, you're live in New Jersey Tonight.
Yes, I have a question for Governor Byrne.
Good.
I'd like to know whether he thinks, or whether Jim Florio thinks, that the middle class in New Jersey, the working class, should be responsible for the debts of those who don't work.
Be a little more specific for us, Malcolm.
Well, for example, I understand that part of the new state budget is transferring funds from areas where people don't work to put the money into their school districts, from the school districts where people do work, and put the money into their school district.
So he takes issue with the Quality Education Act. Now, there was a state Supreme Court decision which mandated a whole...
well, not only that, but the formula is not a formula of taking money from areas where people don't work and put them in areas where people do work. The formula is oriented in terms of local property tax valuations. And if you've got a town where there's virtually no property tax valuations, and so that your school budget has to come out by taxing the local property tax payer like 15% of the value of his property, whereas in a wealthy district, to get even a better education, you can tax him less than 1% of the value of his property. The Supreme Court has said that's not acceptable, and we've had to tailor legislation to compensate for what the court has identified as a constitutional infirmity.
Governor Byrne, did the leaders of the Democratic-controlled legislature make a mistake in pushing through the $1.1 billion Quality Education Act, and then a couple months later, there was QE2. $360 million went from school aid to property taxes. It was all done very quickly, and there was...
yes, and I think that there's a balance in some of this equation between what you do in the name of leadership and what you do in the name of representing your constituents. And when constituents in a number of districts saw this tremendous drain on their own localities, even though it may have met some constitutional mandate, I think legislators, first of all, it's only human, and it's also a matter of survival that you respond to it. And they responded to it. It may have been a little bit political, but they responded to it, and
what's your
I
assessment?
can't criticize them for that.
What's your assessment of the Quality Education Act as it stands now?
Well, I don't know. I have seen a number of studies on the Quality Education Act. And I've seen studies, for instance, by Horace DePodman, who's highly regarded, in my opinion, and former dean at Rutgers, which indicated that we missed the mark in a number of instances in making the formula work. And so I think we're correct in saying to ourselves, we're going to keep analyzing the formula. We're going to see how it works. We're going to admit that if there are mistakes, that we're willing to change them. Okay.
Next up on New Jersey Tonight, Hal in Bridgeton.
Yeah, Governor, good evening.
How are you?
Fine, thank you. Governor, I'm a local official down here in South Jersey.
Sure.
And here this past budget process that we went through on the local level, we submitted a budget up to Trenton, and they turned it down several times. They required that we take part of our surplus to lower the local property taxes down here. Now I read in the paper all the time now that due to the governor's actions, our property taxes have been lowered. But in reality, the property taxes down here have been lowered in some municipalities, primarily because we are now sucking up the reserves that we have taken years and years to build. We submitted the budget 3 different times, and they turned it down. And
how'd you get that surplus? I mean, there got to be 500 mayors wanting to know how you developed that surplus in East Tufton. And that's another interesting question. You got a citizen who lives in your town who's paying too much property tax, in theory, or at least, or he wouldn't have a surplus, and he wants it back. And you're saying, no, let's save it for a rainy day. And I can understand that debate, and I can understand both sides of it. The property owner who says, we really overpaid our property tax, and we want to reduce for next year. I can't quarrel with that.
Governor Byrne, you are well known for your sense of humor, quick with the one-liners. How do you keep that going even through the tough times? Because from what I understand, even though I wasn't in the state in 1977, when I think the popular phrase was one-term Byrne, yeah, you kept it up and you kept them coming, and I think that's got to be kind of an art form almost, keeping the humor going.
Yeah, but this is a funny state. I mean, all you have to do is read the papers, and as I've said, I read the papers a year or so ago, And I just read an article that said that they found that a truck broke down on the turnpike. They found that it was leaking oxygen, and so they closed the turnpike. Now, I read that as a straight article, but if you think about it, it's funny. It's
Really?
funny. Yeah, that they really don't want us breathing oxygen in this, at least not too much of it.
Oh, man.
So all you have to do is know that it's a state where funny things happen, and all I have to I don't make up jokes. I just repeat things I read in the paper a lot of times.
Well, your situation, Jim Florio's situation, has been compared to your situation.
Sure.
In many times now, and I think one of the big differences between you and Jim Florio, perhaps, is the likability factor. And I'm not saying Jim Florio's not likable. As a matter of fact, you talk to people close to him, he's a really nice guy. It's just that it has a hard time coming through. Is that really important for a politician in 1991 to be able to, play to the media and develop that warm, fuzzy sense so people can like them? Ronald Reagan-esque, for instance?
Yeah, but it's also true that, first of all, Jim Florio has had to make so many critical speeches on critical issues at critical times that the press hasn't picked up on his informality. People have said to me, gee, you developed a sense of humor after you got out of office. The fact is that the people on my staff will tell you that I saw the humor in situations when I was in office, but that was not what was reported in the press by and large. I mean, there was one article when I was governor where my son, who was then 7 years old, came home to Morven, which is the governor's mansion those days, with a slip for me to sign. I said, what's this? He says, it's for a class trip. I said, where's the class trip? He said, to the governor's mansion. And I said, well, what happens if I don't sign it? And he said, well, they send me home. Now, that's funny, and I thought that was funny, and I repeated that to the press, but that's not what they remember me for. They remember me for the tough things, the
income
critical
tax
decisions, the income tax, the Pinelands, the Atlantic City, things that had the pros and cons.
We in the media have no sense of humor, Governor. Is that it?
No, I think you do, but I think when you're covering a story, you cover what's critical. And when you're in that governor's office, most things you do are important and critical. And nobody takes the time, and I didn't have the television exposure. I've always thought that all the governor's press conferences should be covered live by public television. I didn't have the kind of exposure that Ronald Reagan had, so that his personality came through. And I'm not sure Jim Florio's real personality comes through, and all you cover is his crises.
All right, we're going to go to Neptune and Colleen. You're live in New Jersey tonight, Colleen.
Hi, Governor Byrne.
Hi, Colleen.
How are you? I have a question in reference to, I just heard a gentleman ask you about the QEA2. I am from an urban district. We are one of the 30th neediest school districts in New Jersey. And we received $1.2 million in discretionary funds. Is there any way that Governor Florio possibly could maybe put a little pressure on these needy districts, the administrative staff, as far as superintendents, business administrators, to see that that money goes to these children? I really think that a lot of people are missing the point. I also feel that Mr. Lynch is, I hear that supposedly he's attacking the teachers in the state of New Jersey, and they're
tough situation. Colleen, we're going to have to let the governor answer because we are running a little short on time.
And I think you put your finger on what's one of the biggest problems in convincing the public of the value of the quality education appropriations, and that is that the people of the state now do not think that the money is going to the right places. They think it's going to bureaucracy and not to teachers. They don't think that it's making an impact on students. Some of the test results we've gotten will confirm that kind of a reaction by the public. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges facing the governor in the future.
Governor, thanks so much for joining us. Former Governor Brendan Byrne, we enjoyed it. Take care.
You too.
And of course, thanks to you at home as always. We appreciate the calls. On Monday, the night before Election Day, we ask this question: why don't a lot of us exercise our right to vote? Cliff Zukin of the Eagleton Institute will join us to talk about voter apathy. That's at 7:30 on Monday. See you then. Have a good weekend.